Man, man, you guys can't just sneak up on me like that, man. You gotta say something. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, man, I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. So you guys know that we have the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz going on right now. So I went ahead and grabbed the game Wesley Soul versus Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa. For all my people coming from the Philippines, I will say maraming salamat. And anybody who is coming from Tamil Nadu, I will say nanri. But if you guys are ready to go, son, let's take a look and see what we got for this game, homie. All right, so we got D4, we got knight to F6, we got C4, E6, and then we have knight to C3, bishop B4. It's the Nimzo Indian. No, I'm playing. You know, the Nimzo Indian is not that bad, man. But you do have to realize some ideas that black has at their disposal. There's a very specific reason why bishop to B4 is being played. We do see queen to C2. One of the main things that black is doing is they're simply pinning this knight down and making sure that they don't have any influence on the E4 square. So sometimes, I mean, you know, knights can jump in there, and that is what queen to C2 is kind of, you know, paying attention to. But black is pinning it down, trying to make it really, really hard for white to push E4 and get their perfect center. So we do have castles by black. We got the move A3. We got bishop takes, queen takes. And this is another one of the reasons why queen to C2 is played. A lot of people don't like the structural damage that comes with, you know, B takes C3. So they just play a queen move, or, you know, later on they might go rook C1 and kind of take back with the rook. Stuff like that. We do see the move B6. We got bishop to G5. Bishop goes to B7. We do see the move F3. So you can see with all these moves that both of the players have been playing. Let me put this down a little bit. Both of these players have been playing that, you know, they are constantly focusing on this E4 square. You see F3 is influencing E4. Bishop to G5 is pinning down this knight to the queen. It is influencing E4, bishop to B7. So that is where pretty much every single player's moves have been either trying to push for that or defend against it. We do see H6 trying to break that pin. Bishop goes back to H4. We do see the move D5, further controlling E4. We do see the move E3, opening up our bishop to C4 in case we see pawn takes C4. We do see the move C5. And the good thing that you can say about black in this position is they are trying to match what white is doing, and they are trying to break white's structure down. A lot of the times when you guys see D4, D5 on the board, you will generally see a C4, C5 just working to try to chip away at what your opponent has established. So we got pawn taking C5, knight B to D7. We do see pawn taking D5. We got G5 hitting the bishop, but we actually say we do not care. Pawn takes E6. And, I mean, you're almost lost as black. No, I'm playing. You're not almost lost. But it is getting pretty dicey, and you definitely have to play very accurately. So it's kind of around now that both players kind of slow down just a little bit, and they're really kind of thinking of, you know, their specific lines that they need to play, stuff like that. We do see knight going to D5, and then we see the novelty of the game, and that is queen down to D2. We have seen queen to C3, and I believe queen to C4 before, but we have never seen queen to D2. It actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're putting the queen. The queen is protecting this pawn right here, but it is also putting it opposite the queen. Maybe rook coming to D1, stuff like that, adding pressure along that file. But I just think it's crazy how, like, you have all these attacks and on-pre situations going on in this position. But like I said, we do see queen to D2. Knight takes on C5. And then we do see pawn taking F7 with check. And then rook taking F7. And then we do see bishop to C4. But just backing up a little bit. Instead of pawn taking F7 with check, it is absolutely suggested by the computer that we actually go rook to D1 and just add so much pressure to this right here. You would probably see pawn takes H4 and then the move E4. And like I said, I mean, this king is a little bit opened up. White's king is not as open, and you do have a lot of pressure on this D file, and the queen can always kind of go take an H6 and kind of get out of dodge type stuff. So that is a really, really nice line, but it is kind of hard to find, so it makes sense how it wasn't found. But we do see this position here where bishop goes to C4. And, I mean, you do have a lot of protection on this square, though, so it is really hard for you to kind of, like, you know, put that much pressure on that point. We got pawn taking H4. We do see the move E4. And then in the game, we actually see queen to E7. And it's actually somewhat crazy in the computer is really wanting rook to c8. And basically, I think the computer's idea, and the commentators were thinking this was the idea of the computer, just to pretty much make long castling by white just completely like an impossible move. The problem is, after rook to c8, you kind of have to find the follow-up move, and after pawn takes d5, you have to find h3, which is not the most visually appealing move if you are black, because it just kind of seems like knight is going to take h3, and then like, what did we just do? But there's a specific idea behind it. If you were to see maybe knight taking h3, that's not the best move, but you would be seeing queen to h4 with check, and just taking advantage of the fact that you have played f3 and you are vulnerable down this diagonal. So it's some pretty deep stuff, man. But like I said, we do not see that. We see queen coming to e7. We do see knight going to e2, just blocking, you know, the pressure on that e file. We got knight taking e4, pawn taking e4, queen taking e4, bishop taking d5, bishop taking d5. And we actually have long castles by white. Now, this is something I did want to do. You don't often see a long castles in games, but you also don't often see it when it kind of, to some people, might seem like you can't play that move. So the most important thing when you are castling into, like, let's say dangerous territory, is making sure that this king does not actually touch or pass through a defended square. So the fact that this queen is coming along this diagonal, the king is just going to step over 2 squares. It does not have to come in contact with any of the squares that the queen is influencing. And this rook does, but the rook doesn't matter when it comes to castling. So if we were in a situation where, let's say this queen was like over here, of course this is like blundering the game, but let's just say, for example, this queen is like right here, and the king is going to land on the square that the queen is attacking. Of course, you cannot do castling in that case, but it's a different situation. Obviously, I just put some dumb stuff on the board, but that is not what we saw. But we do see bishop going to d3, and this is actually really kind of a cute move because, I mean, you're cutting the king off, you're kind of zigzagging and slicing and dicing through it. I mean, really soon a rook can come to c8, and it can be all over for you, homie. So we do see knight going to c3, hitting the queen. Queen goes back to f5. We do see rook d to e1. Now we have just saved our rook. We got rook over to d7, hitting the queen, and do not drop checkmate because it is on c2. So you have to find a good square to go to. We do see queen to e2. Rook a goes to d8. We do see rook h to f1. We got queen to g5 with check. King slides over to b1. You got rook going down to d2. You got queen up to f3. Queen to g6 with check. And you see, like I said, I mean, you know, it's crazy because it really looks like this king is more wide open than this one. But the bishop is actually making life a little bit difficult more for the white king than the black king. The black king is actually somewhat safe, even though, like I said, the king looks like it's super in the open, but it's really hard to get to. We do see king going to a1. Rook takes g2. We got knight up to e4. We do see bishop going to c4, and we have actually reached a point in the game. There is a guess the move. There is kind of a move that you have to play in the position that was kind of the reason that you went knight to e4 in the first place. But if you want to pause the video and try to guess that move, go ahead and do so. Okay. So the crazy thing is you actually have to be comfortable parting ways with this rook down here on f1 for the greater good. The move that I'm looking for is actually knight to d6, and just to kind of take you down like the line that you would see, it is suggested to go bishop takes f1. You got to kind of get some type of compensation. You would be looking at queen to d5 with check. The king would slide over to h8. You would be looking at knight to f7 with check. You got the king going down to h7. You kind of had to do it in that order because if you step down immediately, you would be looking at some rook to e7 checks. And, I mean, you're really messed up if you allow that to happen. So you kind of have to do the zigzag triangulation. And then you would be looking at queen taking d8 with check. And it's crazy because you have to kind of go into this queen pin line, which is queen taking f7 and then rook up to e7, pinning your queen to your king. And this is absolutely how it's saying that you have to play the game. Slight advantage to white. Go figure, right? But you really don't want to either slide the king over or do nothing because checkmate is on h8. And this rook is taking this bishop if you do something like king to g7. So that's a really interesting line. We did not see that after we saw bishop to c4. We actually saw rook to d1. And Ramesh Babu is actually like licking his chops because this is a very favorable position for black. We do see rook taking d1 with check. Rook takes d1. We got rook down to g1, and this is the key move that you had to find in that situation. We do see knight going to f6. So Wesley So is getting into desperado mode here. We do see king side stepping over to h8. We do see knight to h5. Rook takes d1, queen takes d1, and then immediately we see Ramesh Babu like, hey, bro, let's trade queens. You're up a pawn if you're black. You do have a bishop versus a knight, so you're actually in a much more favorable endgame than white is. So absolutely, white is not going to want to trade. The problem is you really can't leave this back rank if you are white because you are cut off here and you're just going to be back rank mated. So we don't want that. But, I mean, there really isn't much better than to trade. So he just goes to g1. We see queen to f1 with check. We see trades here. And then we do see king going over to b1. And I'm going to kind of like get rolling through this because we have quite a few more moves left. It was kind of a long game. So I'm going to try to, you know, get it done as quickly as possible. So we see some. So the main points that I want to mention in this endgame is, you know, white is basically trying to make sure that they are moving their pawns onto dark squares to make sure that they are not targets for this bishop. They're kind of favoring the dark squares with their king, stuff like that. And let me see what else. Yes, we do get into a situation where you are able to sacrifice white's knight for black's bishop, and you end up in a drawn type of an endgame. So getting a little bit further down into that situation, just kind of running through these moves. Like I said, I mean, there's probably about, you know, quite a few moves. So I don't want to hold you guys here forever. We just see some maneuvering, and you kind of see what I was talking about before. The, you know, white king favoring the dark squares, moving pawns to dark squares, or, yeah, dark squares, stuff like that. We do see the maneuvering going down. You kind of have to maintain your connection with this pawn right here. Make sure that you do not drop it. Because even though these are weaker double pawns, I mean, they can be rolling pretty quickly if you kind of get the, you know, pawn out of the way. Also, an in-game concept is the right rook pawn for this bishop, being able to evict this king from this h1 square with the right colored bishop. So we just see some more maneuvering. We're keeping the pawns on the dark squares, like I said. Bishop goes to d3. We got a check. We got the knight coming up, escaping. We are going to grab this pawn down here on h4. We do some more maneuvering. Bishop e4. Maintaining the dark squares with the king, going down, coming up on the dark square. We want to make sure that we don't drop these pawns over, or this pawn right here, because these pawns will be completely outside pass pawns, and we would have to sacrifice our knight for a pawn. We don't want to do that. So we got knight coming up here, king going to b5. Just running through some more moves here. Like I said, I don't want to hold y'all here all day, but it's just basically what I said. The maneuvering, you're making sure you maintain dark squares. We got our pawns on dark squares, and there really isn't a whole lot that white is able to do, or white and black are able to do in this situation. Maneuvering. All right, don't get me. Trying to attack the bishop, or trying to attack the pawn. I mean, you really don't want to trade here. You want to try to grab this pawn, and then you can have at least some threats going on. So you see black just defending against those ideas. We're maintaining the connection with our pawn on the b file. Now we're in a trade right here. We do see this right here, knight going up. And you see that white is constantly working to try to make sure that they are threatening this pawn right here. And they have to keep their king in the vicinity of this pawn. So they have one piece each kind of going and maintaining each side of the board. We got the check right here. Now, the main point that you have to think about in this specific situation right here is if this black king gets too far away from this b pawn, you actually do have the ability to win it. And that is what we actually see coming up pretty soon. So the king now has made the step too far away from this b pawn. So now we are in a situation where we can sacrifice this knight for this h5 pawn and get into a insufficient material endgame. So we do see this coming up here. We got the pawn getting captured here. And then we do see this pawn dropping on h4. And it is a draw by insufficient material. For those of you that might not be aware of, you know, endgames and like checkmating and things like that, you absolutely cannot win a game with just a bishop and a king by itself. You need at least another bishop or a knight, which is like the hardest checkmate ever in the game of chess. But that is that game. So I'm going to get rolling on you. Maraming salamat the king makaibigan po sa nanonood ng king ma video. I will say Vanakkam and Nandri for anybody that is coming up from Tamil Nadu. And I'll see you guys next time.